Hi, Gage. Thanks so much for making time to chat with me today.
Welcome. Thanks for your time, Margaret.
I know that during your time at Queen's, you were really engaged in extracurriculars like musical theater, the International Affairs Association, and of course, in various capacities with CUSA. It's really lovely to see that you've remained so engaged as an alumnus. You were part of the class of 2019, so you're a fairly recent graduate. And
Yep.
as I'm sure you remember, one of the most exciting and stressful parts of graduating from university is entering the world of the job market. Can you tell me a little bit about the steps you took after graduation to get to your current position and what a day in your role looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So as soon as I graduated, I knew nonprofit work was exactly what I wanted to get into. Um, but there weren't any openings exactly where I wanted to be. So I took a job working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which for somebody like me who's a really bad driver and an even worse parker was not the ideal job. But I learned lots there, lots about customer service, finances, things like that. And eventually a job opened up as an annual leadership giving coordinator with Queen's Annual Giving, which is where I'd worked as a student for 4 years. I had worked as a student caller for 2 years and then a supervisor for 2 more after that. And the position opened up to be the coordinator and lead the entire program. So eagerly applied for that and got the phone call, which probably the best phone call of my life, getting that news that my career was starting. So I started there and I did that for just over a year, I want to say. And then I moved into engineering at Queen's as a development officer, doing more frontline fundraising and leadership giving. Did that for just over a year. And now I'm here at Canadian Hearing Services doing major gift work. So a day for me depends kind of what's going on. When there's more priorities going on, things like press releases, there's more to work on. But a typical day, I'll get up, I will send or respond to all of my emails that are important. And I have really bad ADHD. So working on any big task is a nightmare for me. So the first thing I do is I start a Word document and I type everything I have to do that day and break it down. So who I have to email. So I'll just see if there's anything that's going on at the organization that I might want to inform somebody of. I'll go through our database, see if there's anybody who could use an email, a phone call, try and book some visits in. And yeah, that's basically what a day looks like for me.
That sounds really interesting. And I love that you kind of lay your whole day out and then arrange it in the order that's going to work best for you. 'Cause I imagine that in your role, you have to connect with a lot of people and keep your eye on a lot of different things in the course of one day.
Absolutely. And yeah, when you send an email to somebody and you have to keep track of that because you don't, and then, you email them again 4 months later. It's like, sorry, I forgot about you for 4 months. So you have to keep a record of who you've contacted so they don't feel ignored. And yeah, it takes a lot of organization, but I get through it.
And you initially started out at Queen's more in the
Yeah.
psychology arena and planning to pursue law. So, what drew you towards fundraising, and what do you think has made you successful in this role?
Yeah. So when I first stepped foot on Queen's campus, I was going to be a psychology major who was going to become this phenomenal criminal defense lawyer. That was my goal since I was probably in grade 7 or 8. And then just by complete happenstance, I was walking down University Avenue, the sidewalk sale, and one of the student supervisors from the call center was violently waving out flyers for the job, part-time job, get money, get experience. And I thought, well, why not? Took this flyer and thought, well, okay, telemarketing, whatever, I'm sure it'll be fine. Applied for this job, somehow got it. I remember even thinking going into this job, I don't really want it, but okay. So I didn't even dress that nice for this interview. And I went in, got the job, which was, I was excited, told my mom. My mom was blown away that classes hadn't even started and I got a job. And so I went in and I loved it. I can still remember my first call and I spoke to a reverend and we had a great conversation about his time at the theological college. And my first call, somebody made a donation, which was phenomenal. So after 2 years there, that's when I realized I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. I learned that there's so many more areas you can go into in fundraising. I thought fundraising was just here, buy a $2 cupcake for the Canadian Cancer Society. I didn't realize how big of an industry it was. And that really excited me that there were different ways you could get involved, different organizations that you can work with. And I really put a lot of my focus into that, began some networking, getting involved in things like musical theater for sponsorship, QSAA, things like that, and became a supervisor. And yeah, didn't stick with psychology because my marks did not excel in that area. I found history much more interesting at that point. And as for skills, when I first started at Queen's, I was very introverted. Didn't go to any of my residence floor socials, didn't go to any parties, didn't really do anything. But in fundraising work, you're very quickly forced to become extroverted and have conversations with people on the phone. So I think developing that extroverted personality and getting to learn to really actively listen. If you can't actively listen, you will not be successful in fundraising. You have to be able to kind of dig into what people are passionate about, finding their passions. And a lot of people think being a fundraiser is just asking for money. Well, anybody can just send an email and say, hey, give me $100. But being a fundraiser is more like being a middleman between the person you're talking to and the organization, finding out, you're really passionate about Canadian Hearing Services because they helped you when you were younger. Tell me how. And you find out something, a specific aspect that really made an impact on them. Well, you want to give back. Let me tell you how you can directly do that. So kind of finding that link and actively listen. I think those are some of the skills that really help me be successful and get to where I am now.
That's great. And I really like that you shared this idea that you can build the traits you need to be successful in your role, especially like social skills are a difficult thing. And for a few years, people who've spent the last few years learning online and having very, very limited social interaction and human connection, I really like that idea that that's something people can rebuild or build in themselves for the first time just by pushing beyond their comfort zone and jumping into those social events.
Takes work, but eventually, hopefully you will get there like I did. It took a lot for me to become more extroverted and talk to people. I'm sure my husband's probably in the room hearing me say, you were shy.
And as far as talking to people goes, can you tell me a bit about the role that networking played in your journey to your current role? I know that through your posts on the CUSA LinkedIn page, you've offered some really great strategies for finding contacts. Do you have any advice for how to deepen those connections after making that first contact?
Absolutely, yeah. So when I was between my second and third year was one of my colleagues at Queen's, Ben, who you work with. He was always talking about networking. And I think everybody kind of goes, yeah, networking, sure. And it wasn't until I was in my fourth year when I was with QSA and I was sent to an event in Toronto where we had to meet with another colleague who she told us to give her a list of what our career goals were, and then she examined the attendees list of this event and said, here's 3 people each that you're going to talk to. They've been told that you're going to speak to them and you're going to network with them. And I met 3 really, really great people who work in the not-for-profit sector who gave me such great advice, and I'm still in contact with one of them. And that's when I really started getting involved with LinkedIn. And it's such a funny story. When we were working through the summer, there was a policy where when you use the computer, you can't use it for anything that's not Queens related. So you couldn't be on Facebook, you couldn't be on Instagram or playing games, but you were allowed to go on LinkedIn because that was, professional development. So me and one of my friends there who were working together, we kind of had this like competition, almost like who can make the most connections on LinkedIn throughout the summer. So we were just like, oh, this person seems really cool and I want to get to know them, sending connection requests. And before I knew it, I had this massive network that I had no idea what to do with. And then I just started, instead of connecting, following people. And, a great example I'll give, there's a person, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he works in major giving and he shares a lot of really great tips. And I just followed him and I started, answering his polls, commenting on some of his things, liking his posts, and he connected with me. And I've messaged him a couple of times, got some great tips off of him that I employ in my work. So I think it's really about finding somebody who can, give you information, give you advice, give you tips, and not being afraid to ask for help from people. I think a lot of people would be flattered to hear, oh, wow, I've been so successful that somebody wants to talk to me about what I do. And I think that has really helped. And it's actually how I found my current job. Somebody in my network liked a post that Canadian Hearing Services was looking for a major gift officer. So because they liked it, it showed up on my feed on LinkedIn, and I applied, and here I am. So networking can make a difference in your career.
That's amazing. Um, I think that especially early graduates and people anticipating graduation soon, but every university student feels this sense of imposter syndrome at some point. It's been a big conversation topic among this year's CUSO leadership team and how we go about helping our students overcome that.
Hmm.
Feeling of 20 years old, I've got a degree, but you need work experience to get a good job. But how do I get experience without having had a job? So do you have any advice for students who are looking to gain experience and build up their resume during their undergraduate? Like beyond good grades, what makes a young recent graduate stand out to potential employers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the main thing is to really diversify your skill set, and diversify your experience. So I'll be 100% honest and say this on this recording. My grades were not the best. I think I had a solid B minus, B average going through my final 2 years. And I think it was because I did put a lot more work into my extracurriculars than I did my schoolwork. But when I realized I wanted to go into fundraising work, I started seeing any club that had a sponsorship role in it. So that's how I got involved with Queen's Musical Theatre. Somebody recommended I get involved doing their sponsorship. I worked with QSA as the director of giving. I worked with Queen's Period I applied for the sponsorship role, didn't get that, but still stayed involved in another capacity. Did sponsorship for the International Affairs Association, and then I was also the funding drive coordinator for the radio station CFRC for a few months. So just getting all that different experience, with student clubs, the radio station, working with the Alumni Association, it gave me a whole bunch of different perspectives and a lot of great experience. So that way I knew that when I went to apply for a fundraising job, people could see, okay, he didn't just work in fundraising, but he went out of his way to find different ways to get experience and do different things. So I think just if you can figure out what you want to do, find out, if you just want to go into accounting, for example, if you're taking commerce, try and get involved in as many accounting related things as you can, whether it's a student club, a networking group, things like that, just ways to show that you can go above and beyond to learn about the field.
That's great. And I would imagine that's also a really good way for people who are feeling a little bit adrift about what they want to do after graduation to find what fits for them, to just try a lot of different things and get as much tangible experience as possible to make sure that they really love it.
Absolutely, yeah, because when I was working at the call center, I was just sitting there with a headset on like this and calling people, and that's all you were doing. But it solidified that, I was good at what I did and I enjoyed what I did when I was going into businesses, talking to people face to face, shaking hands, saying, here, this is a sponsorship package. If you give us, X, Y, Z, this is what we can give to you in return, or we might not be giving you something in return. Would you like to just be philanthropic and support us? And it really does reinforce that what you're doing is right.
And do you have any cool stories from your career, from your time at Queen's that have really, made an impression on you?
Yeah, for sure. So there's this one story, and I will never, ever forget this. There was a man that I was introduced to when I was working in engineering, right before I left Queen's. And his daughter had passed away in the late 90s to leukemia, and she was a student in engineering. Um, and every year they plant daffodils in their hometown to commemorate her. And there's actually a scholarship and a medal that goes to a student in fourth year engineering in her memory. It's called the Michelle Mainland Award. And I got to meet with her father and hear about how they commemorate her and all those great stories. And to this day, I still stay in touch with the family. I decided to make an annual contribution to that fund because I saw how much of an impact this scholarship has made on people, how they receive this award in her memory. And I still plan on meeting with the father, Norm, one day, going down, and he invited me to have a cup of tea in his gazebo one day and help plant some daffodils. And I think that's, even though I was fundraising and I was talking to him about donating things. It was this fact that I got to meet with him and hear all these amazing stories about his daughter and the family. And that's a story I will never, ever forget, and reinforces to me the importance of being a fundraiser and helping people make a difference.
That's really lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you. This has been so informative. And I think that the tips you've shared are going to help a lot of our students, especially ones about to jump off into the great unknown after graduation.
You're welcome. And yeah, thanks for thinking of me for this opportunity, and always glad to talk nonprofit work.
Amazing. Thank you.